The howl of the wind against the windows sent shivers down Sarah's spine as she stared at the only bed in the suite. A king-sized bed, luxurious with its Egyptian cotton sheets and down comforter, but still only one bed. And standing across from her, looking just as uncomfortable, was Alexander Blackwood, the cold, intimidating billionaire she'd been assigned to interview for her magazine. They were trapped here, with no way out until the historic blizzard passed, which could be days. "There's been a mistake," Sarah said for the third time, her voice wobbling as she clutched her notebook to her chest. "I specifically booked 2 rooms. This can't be happening." Alexander ran a hand through his perfectly styled dark hair, messing it up for the first time since she'd met him that morning. "The hotel is fully booked. The storm caught everyone off guard. We're lucky to have this." "Lucky?" Sarah almost laughed. How was being trapped with a man known for his ruthless business tactics and icy demeanor lucky? She'd heard the stories, how he'd made grown men cry in boardrooms, how he'd built his empire by crushing anyone in his path. And now she was stuck with him, in a room, with one bed. The lights flickered, causing Sarah to jump. The storm was getting worse. "I'll take the couch," Alexander said, his voice deep and commanding. "You take the bed." Sarah glanced at the small loveseat that wouldn't even fit her 5'5" frame, let alone his 6'2" muscular build. "That's ridiculous. You won't fit. I've slept in worse places." The interview that morning had gone terribly. Alexander had been closed off, giving one-word answers, checking his phone constantly. She'd barely gotten enough material for a paragraph, let alone the feature article her editor expected. Now they were trapped together, and the tension in the room was suffocating. Sarah walked to the window, watching the snow pile up against the glass. The city below was disappearing under a white blanket. No taxis, no people, nothing moving except the relentless snow. "How long do you think we'll be stuck here?" she asked, trying to keep the panic from her voice. The weather report said at least 48 hours, maybe more. 2 days. 2 days with Alexander Blackwood. Sarah felt her chest tighten. She'd never been good in confined spaces, and this felt like her worst nightmare. "We should order room service while the kitchen is still operational," Alexander suggested, already picking up the phone. As he placed the order, Sarah took inventory of their situation. They each had the clothes on their backs. Her in her professional but now wrinkled skirt suit, him in his designer suit that probably cost more than her car. Their phones were charged, but the cell service was spotty at best. "They said they'll send up whatever they can," Alexander reported. "The kitchen staff is limited due to the storm." Sarah nodded, still staring out the window. She heard Alexander moving around behind her, the rustle of his jacket being removed, the sound of his shoes being kicked off. "Ms. Collins," he said, his formal tone making her turn around, "we need to make the best of this situation. I suggest we be civil and try to coexist peacefully until the storm passes." "Of course," she replied, trying to match his professional tone. "And please call me Sarah." "Alexander," he offered, though it sounded like it pained him to be informal. An awkward silence fell between them. Sarah fidgeted with her notebook, wondering if she should try to continue the interview. But the thought of facing more of his cold, dismissive answers made her stomach turn. A knock at the door made them both jump. Room service had arrived with 2 covered plates, a bottle of wine, and an apologetic note explaining that this might be their last hot meal for a while. They ate in silence, sitting at opposite ends of the small dining table. Sarah picked at her pasta, her appetite gone. Alexander ate methodically, like everything else he did, controlled, precise, emotionless. "The interview this morning," he suddenly said, breaking the silence. "It didn't go well." Sarah looked up, surprised by his admission. "No, it didn't. I'm not good at opening up. I noticed." A ghost of a smile crossed his face, so quick she almost missed it. My publicist will be furious. This article was supposed to help soften my image. Why do you need to soften your image? Sarah asked, journalist instincts kicking in. Alexander set down his fork, considering her question. The board thinks I'm too harsh. Are you? Am I what? Too harsh? He leaned back in his chair, studying her with those intense green eyes that had graced countless magazine covers. I do what needs to be done to succeed. Some people can't handle that. And what about people's feelings? Their lives? Business isn't about feelings. Sarah felt her temper rise. This was exactly why she dreaded this assignment. Business is conducted by people. People have feelings. Feelings cloud judgment. Feelings make us human. They stared at each other across the table, the tension crackling between them. The lights flickered again, and this time they went out completely, plunging the room into darkness. Sarah gasped, her fear of the dark overwhelming her irritation. She heard Alexander's chair scrape back. Stay where you are, he commanded. I'll find the emergency lights. She heard him moving around, bumping into furniture, muttering under his breath. A moment later, soft light filled the room from the emergency lanterns he'd found in the closet. In the gentle glow, Alexander looked different. Less intimidating, more human. His hair was messier now, his tie loosened, the top button of his shirt undone. Are you afraid of the dark? He asked, noticing her white-knuckled grip on the table. A little, she admitted. He placed a lantern on the table between them. The backup generators should kick in soon. But they didn't. Hours passed, and the suite grew colder as the heating system failed. Sarah shivered in her thin blouse, having removed her suit jacket earlier. Without a word, Alexander stood and retrieved his suit jacket, draping it over her shoulders. The gesture was so unexpected, so gentle, that Sarah found herself speechless. Thank you, she finally managed. He nodded, returning to his seat. They sat in the lantern light, the storm raging outside, the temperature dropping inside. We should probably try to sleep, Alexander suggested. Conserve energy. The bed issue loomed between them again. Sarah glanced at the tiny couch, then at Alexander's large frame. We could share, she said hesitantly. The bed is huge. We could put pillows between us. Alexander's eyebrows shot up. Are you sure? It's practical. We need to stay warm. And so, they prepared for bed with awkward formality. Sarah changed in the bathroom into the hotel robe, while Alexander waited outside. They constructed a wall of pillows down the middle of the bed, each claiming their side like territories in a war. As Sarah lay in the darkness, listening to Alexander's breathing on the other side of the pillow wall, she wondered how she'd ended up here. The storm howled outside, the room grew colder, and despite her best efforts, she shivered. Sarah! Alexander's voice came through the darkness. Yes? You're shivering. The pillow wall is preventing us from sharing body heat. She knew he was right. The practical part of her brain understood the logic, but the other part, the part that had read all those articles about the ruthless Alexander Blackwood, hesitated. Just for warmth, he added quickly. Nothing else. Slowly, they dismantled the pillow wall. Alexander kept a respectful distance, but the shared warmth was immediate and welcome. Sarah found herself relaxing despite the strange situation. Tell me something, she said into the darkness. What? Anything. Something real, not the corporate speak from this morning. There was a long pause. Then, I hate storms. Why? When I was 8, I got lost in a snowstorm. I was building a fort in the woods behind our house, and the storm came in fast. I couldn't find my way back. Sarah turned slightly toward his voice. What happened? I spent 6 hours huddled under a fallen tree. My father finally found me. I've hated storms ever since." It was the most personal thing he'd said all day. Sarah felt something shift between them. "I'm sorry," she said softly. "Don't be. It taught me to always be prepared, to never let myself be vulnerable again." "That sounds lonely." Another pause. "It is." They fell silent, but it was a different kind of silence now. Less tense, more companionable. The storm continued its assault on the windows, but inside their dark cocoon, something was changing. As Sarah drifted towards sleep, she heard Alexander whisper, "Thank you." "For what?" "For making this bearable." She smiled in the darkness. Maybe Alexander Blackwood wasn't the monster the media painted him to be. Maybe, just maybe, there was a human being under all that ice. Sarah woke to find herself pressed against something warm and solid. It took her sleep-foggy brain a moment to remember where she was and who she was with. Her eyes flew open to find herself curled against Alexander's chest, his arm draped over her waist. She froze, afraid to move and wake him. In sleep, his face had lost its harsh edges. He looked younger, more vulnerable. His dark lashes rested against his cheeks. His mouth relaxed instead of pressed into its usual firm line. Carefully, she tried to extract herself, but his arm tightened around her. 5 more minutes, he mumbled, still asleep. Sarah's heart skipped. This wasn't the cold, calculating billionaire from yesterday. This was just a man, warm and human, and holding her like she was something precious. "Alexander," she whispered. His eyes opened slowly, focusing on her face. For a moment, he looked confused. Then reality crashed in. "I apologize," he said stiffly. "That was inappropriate." "It's fine," Sarah assured him, missing his warmth already. "We were cold. It happens." The power was still out, but weak daylight filtered through the windows. The storm hadn't let up. If anything, it looked worse. Alexander got out of bed, running a hand through his disheveled hair. "I'll check if room service is operational." He picked up the phone, listened, then shook his head. Sarah wrapped the hotel robe tighter around herself and went to the window. The world outside was white and violent. Snow swirled in angry patterns, and she couldn't see the building across the street. "Looks like we're not going anywhere today," she said. "No." They freshened up using bottled water, since the taps weren't working without power. The emergency supplies in the room included protein bars and more water, but not much else. "We should ration," Alexander suggested. "Ever practical." Sarah nodded, then noticed him favoring his right shoulder. "Are you hurt?" "Old injury. Axe up in the cold." "Let me see." He hesitated, then slowly unbuttoned his wrinkled dress shirt. Sarah tried not to stare at his muscled chest as he turned to show her his shoulder. "How did this happen?" she asked, her fingers hovering near but not touching the scar. "Car accident! 5 years ago. The one that killed your brother?" Alexander went rigid. "You've done your research." "I'm sorry. I shouldn't have." "No, it's fine. It's public record." He pulled his shirt back on. "Yes, that accident." Sarah wanted to ask more, but his closed-off expression stopped her. Instead, she said, "I could massage it. The shoulder, I mean. I took some physical therapy courses in college." He looked surprised. "You don't have to. We're stuck here, might as well be useful." After a moment's hesitation, he nodded. They sat on the edge of the bed, Alexander facing away from her. As her hands worked the tense muscles of his shoulder, she felt him slowly relax. "Why journalism?" he asked suddenly. "I wanted to tell stories. Real ones. About real people." "And how's that working out?" Sarah laughed. "Well, I'm currently trapped in a hotel room with a subject who won't talk to me so." She felt more than heard his chuckle. "Fair point." "Why business?" she countered. Was it always the plan? No. I wanted to be an artist. Sarah's hands stilled. Really? Really? I painted sculptures too, but after my father died, someone had to take over the company. What about your brother? James wasn't suited for business. He was the dreamer. I was the practical one. Sarah resumed the massage, processing this information. The ruthless billionaire had wanted to be an artist. It seemed impossible, yet somehow it made sense. Do you still paint? No. Why not? No time. No point. Art doesn't need a point. Everything needs a point. They fell into comfortable silence as Sarah continued working on his shoulder. When she finished, Alexander turned to face her. "Thank you," he said. "It feels better." Their eyes met, and something passed between them. A understanding, maybe. Or recognition. Sarah wasn't sure, but it made her breath catch. The moment was broken by a loud crack from outside. They both jumped. "Tree branch," Alexander identified, moving to the window. "The weight of the snow is breaking them." They spent the morning talking, really talking. Alexander told her about growing up in his father's shadow, always trying to prove himself. Sarah shared stories about her small-town childhood and her dreams of becoming a serious journalist. By afternoon, they were sharing a protein bar, laughing about their respective worst interviews. There was this actress. Sarah giggled. She brought her pet snake to the interview. It escaped, and we spent 2 hours trying to find it. At least it wasn't boring, Alexander pointed out. His smile transformed his face, making him look years younger. "Your turn." "Worst business meeting?" "Tokyo. 3 years ago. I had food poisoning but couldn't cancel. I threw up in a potted plant during negotiations." Sarah burst out laughing. "No!" "Yes. Still closed the deal, though." "Of course you did." As the day wore on, the temperature continued to drop. They huddled under blankets, sharing body heat without awkwardness now. "Can I ask you something personal?" Sarah ventured. "Haven't you been doing that all day?" "More personal." Alexander tensed slightly but nodded. "Why are you so afraid of letting people in?" He was quiet for so long she thought he wouldn't answer. Then, "Everyone I've let in has left. My mother died when I was 12. My father had a heart attack my senior year of college. My brother," he swallowed hard, "and my fiancée left when she realized I couldn't be the man she wanted." What kind of man did she want? Someone who put her first. Before the company, before the responsibilities. I couldn't do that. Sarah touched his hand gently. "That doesn't mean everyone will leave, doesn't it?" His green eyes were dark with pain. "You'll leave too. Once the storm passes, you'll write your article and move on to the next story." "That's my job." "Exactly." They stared at each other, the air between them charged with something neither wanted to name. "What if?" Sarah started, then stopped. "What?" "Nothing. Forget it." But Alexander caught her hand. "What if what?" "What if I didn't want to leave?" The words hung between them, dangerous and full of possibility. Alexander's thumb traced circles on her palm, sending shivers up her arm. "Sarah," he said, his voice rough. "Don't what?" "Don't make this something it's not. We're trapped. The situation is heightening everything." She pulled her hand away. "Hurt. Right. Of course. I'm just another reporter looking for a story. That's not what I meant. Isn't it?" She stood up, wrapping a blanket around herself. God forbid the great Alexander Blackwood admit he might actually feel something. "You don't understand." "I understand perfectly. You're so afraid of being hurt that you hurt others first." Alexander stood too, anger flashing in his eyes. "You've known me for 24 hours. You don't get to psychoanalyze me." "Someone should. You're letting fear run your life. Better than letting emotions make me weak." They glared at each other, both breathing hard. The tension that had been building all day finally exploded. "You think emotions make you weak?" Sarah demanded. "They make you human." "I can't afford to be human. Too many people depend on me." "That's an excuse, and you know it." Alexander stepped closer, his eyes blazing. "You want to know the truth? Fine. The truth is, I'm terrified. Of you. Of this. Of feeling anything real because everyone I've ever cared about has been ripped away from me. Is that human enough for you?" Sarah's anger evaporated at the raw pain in his voice. "Alexander." "Don't." He turned away. "Just." She watched him walk to the window, his shoulders tense, his hands clenched at his sides. The storm outside seemed to mirror the one inside the room. Slowly, she approached him. "I'm scared too," she admitted softly. He didn't turn. "Of what?" "Of this. Of you. Of wanting something I can't have." Alexander's reflection in the window met her eyes. "What do you want, Sarah?" The question hung in the air, loaded with meaning. Sarah took a deep breath. "I want to know the real you. Not the billionaire. Not the CEO. Just you." He turned then, his expression vulnerable in a way she'd never seen. "What if you don't like what you find?" "What if I do?" They stood there, inches apart, the world reduced to just the two of them. "This is a bad idea," he whispered. "Probably," she agreed. Neither of them moved. The air crackled with possibility. Sarah's heart pounded so hard she was sure he could hear it. Then the lights flickered on. They jumped apart as the room suddenly filled with harsh fluorescent light. The spell was broken. "Power's back," Alexander said unnecessarily, his professional mask sliding back into place. Sarah nodded, feeling the loss of the moment like a physical ache. "Great." They busied themselves with checking phones and adjusting the thermostat. But something had shifted between them, something that couldn't be undone. As night fell again, they prepared for bed with new awareness. The pillow wall seemed ridiculous now. Lying in the dark, Sarah listened to Alexander's breathing and wondered what might have happened if the lights had stayed off just a few minutes longer. "Sarah?" His voice was soft in the darkness. "Yes? I'm glad you're here, despite everything." She smiled. "Me too." It wasn't a declaration of love, it wasn't a promise, but it was something. A crack in the wall, a beginning. And for now, that was enough. The power went out again at 3 a.m. Sarah woke to complete darkness and the sound of Alexander's rapid breathing. At first, she thought he was awake, but then she heard him mumble something incoherent, his body twitching beside her. "No, James, don't. I can't reach." A nightmare. Sarah hesitated, unsure whether to wake him. His movements became more agitated, and she could hear the distress in his voice. "Alexander," she said softly, reaching across the pillow barrier to touch his shoulder. "Alexander, wake up." He jerked awake with a gasp, sitting up abruptly. In the darkness, she could hear his ragged breathing. "Sorry," he muttered. "Did I wake you?" "It's okay." "Bad dream?" He didn't answer immediately. Sarah heard him run his hands through his hair, a gesture she'd learned meant he was struggling with something. "The accident," he finally said. "I dream about it sometimes." Sarah pushed aside the pillows between them and moved closer. "Do you want to talk about it?" "No." "Yes. I don't know." He laughed bitterly. "My therapist would be proud. I'm actually considering talking about feelings." "You see a therapist?" "Saw. Past tense. The board insisted after. After James died. I went to 3 sessions and never went back." "Why not?" "Because talking doesn't change anything. James is still dead. It's still my fault." Sarah sat up too, facing him in the darkness. "How was it your fault?" Alexander was quiet for so long she thought he wouldn't answer. When he spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. We were arguing. About the company, as always. He wanted to sell his shares, use the money to open an art gallery. I called him irresponsible, a dreamer who never grew up. He said I was turning into our father, cold, obsessed with money and power. He paused, and Sarah waited, knowing he needed to tell this story in his own time. I was driving. It was raining. I was so angry. I wasn't paying attention. The truck came out of nowhere. I swerved, but his voice broke. The passenger side took the full impact. If I'd been paying attention, if I hadn't been so caught up in proving I was right, it was an accident, Sarah said gently. Was it? Or was it my arrogance killing the only family I had left? Sarah reached for his hand in the darkness, finding it clenched into a fist. Slowly, she worked his fingers open, intertwining them with hers. You couldn't have known. But I should have. I should have been better. Should have listened to him instead of always trying to control everything. Is that why you work so hard? Trying to make up for it? Maybe. Or maybe I'm just trying to prove him wrong. Show that being cold and focused is the right way. But you're not cold, Sarah said. Not really. Alexander laughed humorlessly. Tell that to the hundreds of employees I've fired, the companies I've destroyed. There's more to you than that. How do you know? We've been trapped here for less than 2 days. You don't know me. I know you gave me your jacket when I was cold. I know you're haunted by your brother's death. I know you wanted to be an artist. I know you're terrified of letting anyone close because you're afraid of losing them. Alexander's hand tightened on hers. Stop. Why? Because I'm right? Because you're making me hope. And hope is dangerous. Sarah moved closer, close enough to feel his breath on her face. The darkness made her brave. Without the harsh reality of light, she could pretend this was a dream, that there wouldn't be consequences. Sarah! Alexander's voice was strained. What are you doing? Taking a chance. She leaned forward, finding his face with her free hand. His stubble was rough against her palm. She felt him tense, but he didn't pull away. We shouldn't, he whispered, but his hand came up to cover hers on his cheek. Probably not. Their lips met in the darkness. The kiss was soft at first, tentative, as if they were both afraid the other would pull away. Then Alexander made a sound deep in his throat and pulled her closer, the kiss becoming desperate, hungry. Sarah had been kissed before, but never like this. Never with such intensity, such need. It was as if Alexander was pouring all his loneliness, all his pain, all his carefully hidden emotions into this one moment. When they finally broke apart, both breathing heavily, reality came crashing back. I'm sorry, Alexander said immediately. I shouldn't have. Don't, Sarah interrupted. Don't apologize. Not for that. This complicates everything. Everything's already complicated. They sat in silence, still close enough to feel each other's warmth. Sarah's lips tingled from the kiss, and her heart was racing. What happens when the storm ends? Alexander asked quietly. I don't know. You'll still write your article? Yes. And then you'll leave. Sarah didn't answer. What could she say? That in less than 48 hours, she'd developed feelings for a man she was supposed to interview objectively? That she was considering throwing away her journalistic integrity for someone who might never let her in completely? I don't want to hurt you, Alexander said. Then don't. It's not that simple. I'm not. I can't be what you need. What do I need? Someone whole. Someone who isn't broken. Sarah laughed softly. Everyone's broken, Alexander. Some people just hide it better. I'm tired of hiding. Then don't. He pulled her into his arms then, holding her tight against his chest. Sarah could hear his heart beating, fast and strong. Tell me something else, she said. Something true. I haven't painted in 5 years, But I still dream in colors. Vivid, impossible colors that I can never quite capture when I wake up. What else? I keep James's guitar in my office. Sometimes, when I'm alone, I try to play it. I'm terrible, but it makes me feel closer to him. More. I'm terrified that I'm becoming my father. Cold, distant, alone. He died at his desk, you know. Heart attack. His secretary found him the next morning. Sarah tightened her arms around him. You're not your father. How do you know? Because you're here telling me these things. Because you care enough to be scared. They talked through the night, sharing secrets in the darkness. Alexander told her about his mother's laugh, about the treehouse he and James built, about the first time he fell in love with his high school art teacher, who gently redirected his crush into a passion for painting. Sarah shared her own stories, about her father's death when she was 16, about struggling to pay for college, about the boyfriend who left her for her best friend. As dawn approached, they fell asleep wrapped in each other's arms, the pillow wall forgotten. When Sarah woke, the power was back on, and weak sunlight filtered through the windows. The storm had finally passed. Alexander was already up, standing by the window in his wrinkled clothes. His posture was tense, his expression unreadable. The roads are being cleared, he said without turning. We should be able to leave by afternoon. Sarah sat up, pulling the blanket around her shoulders. Something had changed. The warmth of the night was gone, replaced by a chill that had nothing to do with the temperature. Alexander? I've been thinking, he said, still facing the window. About the article, about us. Her heart sank. She knew that tone. It was his business voice, the one he used to distance himself. Don't do this, she said softly. Do what? Push me away. Not after last night. He turned then, and the look in his eyes made her breath catch. Pain, fear, longing, all warring for dominance. Last night was a mistake. No, it wasn't. Sarah, be reasonable. We're from different worlds. This was just. Don't you dare say it was just proximity. Don't you dare reduce what happened to convenience. Alexander ran a hand through his hair, frustration evident in every line of his body. What do you want from me? The truth. Just the truth. The truth. He laughed bitterly. The truth is, I'm terrified. The truth is, I haven't felt this way about anyone since, ever. The truth is, I want to ask you to stay, but I know I have no right. The truth is, I'm probably going to regret this moment for the rest of my life. Sarah stood, crossing the room to stand in front of him. Then don't regret it. Take a chance. I don't know how. Learn. They stared at each other, the tension crackling between them. Sarah could see the war playing out in his eyes, fear versus hope. A knock at the door shattered the moment. Room service, a voice called. We're checking on all guests now that the power's back. Alexander stepped away from her to answer the door. Sarah watched him slip back into his public persona, like armor, shoulders straight, expression neutral, voice professionally pleasant. The hotel staff member informed them that the lobby would be serving hot breakfast and that transportation would be available by 2 p.m. The real world was intruding, bringing with it all the complications they'd managed to forget. After the staff member left, Alexander turned to her. We should get ready. Pack what little we have. That's it? Sarah demanded. We're just going to pretend nothing happened? What else can we do? We can try. We can see where this goes. Where can it go, Sarah? You have your life, your career. If you say just a moment or just circumstance, I swear I'll throw something at you. Despite himself, Alexander smiled. You're impossible. And you're scared. Yes, he admitted. I am. Sarah took a step toward him. So am I. But isn't it worth the risk? Before he could answer, his phone rang. He looked at the caller ID and grimaced. "It's my assistant. I have to take this." As he answered the call, slipping into CEO mode, Sarah felt the moments slipping away. She listened to him rearrange meetings, discuss contracts, plan strategies. The real Alexander Blackwood emerging from the man she'd gotten to know. When he hung up, he looked at her apologetically. "I have to go. There's a crisis with our Tokyo division." "Of course there is." "Sarah." "No, I get it. Back to reality, right?" The bitterness in her voice made him flinch. "This is who I am." "No," she said. "This is who you choose to be." They packed in silence, the easy intimacy of the past 2 days evaporating like morning mist. By the time they made it down to the lobby, they were back to being strangers, the journalist and her subject, nothing more. In the chaos of departing guests and arriving rescue vehicles, they were separated. Sarah caught one last glimpse of Alexander being whisked away by his driver, phone pressed to his ear, already lost in his world of deals and decisions. She stood in the lobby, clutching her notebook, wondering if the past 48 hours had been real or just a dream born of isolation and proximity. Her phone buzzed. A text from her editor. "Got your interview? Need the story ASAP." Sarah looked at her notes, at the empty pages that should have been filled with professional observations. Instead, all she had were memories of shared secrets in the dark, of a kiss that had shaken her to her core, of a man who was so much more than his public image. How could she possibly write this story now? As she stepped out into the snow-covered street, Sarah realized she had a choice to make. She could write the article everyone expected, the cold, calculating billionaire exposed, or she could write the truth about the man behind the myth, the artist trapped in a businessman's body, the lonely soul afraid to love. Either way, she knew her life would never be the same. Sarah stared at her laptop screen, the cursor blinking mockingly at her. 3 days had passed since the storm, since Alexander, since everything changed. Her editor was getting impatient, sending increasingly urgent emails about the Blackwood article. She'd written and deleted the opening paragraph 17 times. Her phone buzzed. Another message from her editor. "Need that article by tonight, Sarah. No more delays." She rubbed her tired eyes and looked at her notes. 2 notebooks full of observations, but none of them felt right anymore. How could she write about the ruthless billionaire when she knew about the boy who'd gotten lost in a snowstorm? How could she describe his cold demeanor when she could still feel the warmth of his arms around her? Her phone buzzed again. This time, her heart skipped when she saw the name. Alexander Blackwood. "Can we talk?" She stared at the message. They hadn't spoken since the hotel. She'd convinced herself he'd forgotten about her, gone back to his world of board meetings and acquisitions. She'd almost convinced herself she'd imagined the whole thing. Before she could overthink it, she replied, "When and where?" "My office? 1 hour? I'll be there." Blackwood Industries occupied the top 10 floors of a gleaming skyscraper downtown. Sarah had been here before for the original interview, but everything felt different now. The marble lobby seemed colder, the security more intimidating. "Miss Collins." A polished assistant greeted her. "Mr. Blackwood is expecting you." The elevator ride to the top floor felt endless. Sarah's palms were sweating. What did he want? Was he going to ask her to kill the story, threaten her? The elevator doors opened to reveal a sleek reception area. Another assistant led her down a hallway to massive double doors. "He's inside," she said, opening the door. Sarah stepped into the largest office she'd ever seen. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a breathtaking view of the city. Alexander stood with his back to her, looking out at the skyline. "You came," he said without turning. "You asked me to." He turned then, and Sarah's breath caught. He looked tired, dark circles under his eyes, his usually perfect appearance slightly rumpled. "I haven't slept," he admitted. "Not since." "Since the hotel?" He nodded. "I keep thinking about what you said, about choosing who I want to be." Sarah stepped further into the office, noticing details she'd missed during her first visit. A guitar in the corner, James's guitar. A painting on the wall that seemed out of place among the modern art, vibrant, emotional, clearly the work of a young artist. "Is that yours?" she asked, pointing to the painting. "From high school. The only one I kept." "It's beautiful." Alexander moved to his desk, picking up a folder. "I had my team do some research. About you." Sarah stiffened. "Why?" "Because I needed to know if what I was feeling was real or just circumstance." He opened the folder. "You've won 3 journalism awards. Your piece on homeless veterans made the mayor cry. You turned down a job at the Times to stay with your small magazine because you believe in their mission. You investigated me? I needed to understand. You're not just some reporter. You're." He struggled for words. "You're the real thing. Honest. Principled. Everything I'm not." "That's not true." "Isn't it?" He gestured to his office. "Look at this place. This isn't who I wanted to be." Sarah moved closer to him. "Then change." "It's not that simple." "Why not?" He laughed humorlessly. "Because I have shareholders, employees, responsibilities, and none of that prevents you from being human." They stared at each other across his massive desk. The tension from the hotel room was back, crackling between them. "Why did you really call me here?" Sarah asked. Alexander walked around the desk to stand in front of her. "To ask you not to write the article." Her heart sank. "You want to kill the story?" "No. I want you to write a different one. The real one." "What do you mean?" He took her hands in his. "Write about me. The real me. Not the billionaire. Not the CEO. Write about the man who's terrified of storms and dreams in colors he can't paint anymore. Write about someone who's trying to figure out how to be human again." Sarah's throat tightened. "That's not the story my editor wants." "Then write it anyway. Or don't write it at all. Just don't write what they expect. Don't make me into the villain everyone thinks I am." "And what happens after? After I write this story, or don't write it?" Alexander's hands tightened on hers. "I don't know, but I want to find out. With you." "Alexander, I know it's crazy. I know we barely know each other. But I haven't felt this way. Ever. You make me want to be better, to be more than just the sum of my fears." Sarah pulled her hands away, needing distance to think. She walked to the window, looking out at the city below. "If I write the real story, I might lose my job," she said. "My editor wants the exposé, the takedown of the ruthless billionaire. And if you write what they want, then I lose myself. And probably you." Alexander came to stand beside her. "I can't ask you to sacrifice your career." "You're not asking. I'm choosing." She turned to face him. "But I need something from you in return. Anything. The truth. All of it. No more walls, no more hiding. If I'm going to risk everything, I need to know it's real." Alexander nodded. "Ask me anything." "Why me? You could have anyone. Models, actresses, socialites. Why a journalist who was sent to destroy you?" He smiled, the first real smile she'd seen since the hotel. "Because you see me. Not the money, not the power. You see the scared boy still lost in the snowstorm. You see the artist trying to break free. You see me. And what do you see when you look at me?" "Hope," he said simply. "I see hope." Sarah felt tears prick her eyes. "This is insane. Completely. We barely know each other." "We know enough. My world is tiny apartments and ramen noodles. Yours is private jets and champagne." So we'll drink champagne in tiny apartments. Despite herself, Sarah laughed. You're impossible. You said that before. In the hotel. The mention of the hotel brought back memories. The darkness, the confessions, the kiss. Sarah saw the same memories reflected in Alexander's eyes. I can't think straight when you look at me like that, she admitted. Then don't think. He stepped closer, cupping her face in his hands. This kiss was different from the one in the hotel. No darkness to hide in, no storm to blame. This was a choice, made in full daylight, with eyes wide open. When they broke apart, Sarah rested her forehead against his chest. What are we doing? Taking a chance, he murmured into her hair. Isn't that what you told me to do? I'm scared. Me too. They stood there for a long moment, holding each other in his sterile office that suddenly felt warm and alive. Finally, Sarah pulled back. I need to go. Why? Because I have an article to write. The real one. Alexander smiled. And after? After we see what happens. No promises, no expectations, just possibility. He nodded. I can live with that. Sarah gathered her things, pausing at the door. Alexander? Yes? Start painting again? The world needs your colors. She left before he could respond, before she could change her mind, before reality could intrude on the fragile hope they'd built. Back in her apartment, Sarah sat at her laptop and began to write. Alexander Blackwood is not the man you think he is. The media paints him as a ruthless billionaire, a corporate shark who destroys companies and lives without remorse. But that image is as two-dimensional as the headlines that created it. The real Alexander Blackwood is a study in contradictions. He's a businessman who wanted to be an artist, a leader who's terrified of letting anyone follow too close, a man haunted by loss who's afraid to love again. During a recent blizzard that trapped us in a hotel suite for 48 hours, I discovered the human being behind the headlines. I found a man who still dreams in colors he can't paint, who keeps his dead brother's guitar in his office, who builds walls not to keep others out but to keep himself from breaking. This is not the exposé my editor wanted. This is not the takedown of a corporate titan. This is the story of someone learning to be human again, one terrifying step at a time. And perhaps that's the most important story of all. Sarah sent the article at midnight, knowing it would either make or break her career. Her editor called immediately. What the hell is this, Collins? The truth. This isn't what we discussed. This is a love letter. It's honest journalism. It's showing the whole person, not just the caricature. There was a long pause. You're in love with him, aren't you? Sarah didn't hesitate. Maybe, but that's not why I wrote it. I can't publish this. Then I'll take it somewhere else. Another pause. You'd quit over this? If I have to. Her editor sighed. Let me sleep on it. We'll talk tomorrow. Sarah hung up and stared at her phone. She'd done it. Jumped off the cliff. Now all she could do was hope she'd learned to fly on the way down. Her phone buzzed. A text from Alexander. Whatever happens, thank you. For seeing me, A. She smiled and replied, whatever happens, it was worth it. Outside her window, snow began to fall again. But this time, Sarah wasn't afraid of being trapped. Sometimes, she realized, the best things happen when you have nowhere to run. The article went viral within hours. Sarah woke to her phone exploding with notifications. Her editor had published the piece with the headline, The Man Behind the Myth, Alexander Blackwood Unmasked. But it wasn't the takedown everyone expected. Comments poured in. Some accused her of being bought off. Others praised her for humanizing someone they'd only seen as a villain. Financial blogs debated whether the article would affect Blackwood Industries' stock price. Twitter was having a field day. Her editor called at 7 a.m. You've created a shitstorm, Collins. Good or bad? Both. The website crashed twice from traffic. Other magazines want to interview you about the interview. The Times called, they want to offer you a job again. And Blackwood? Stocks up 3 points. Apparently, investors like knowing their CEO is human. Sarah hadn't heard from Alexander since the previous night. She wondered if he regretted asking her to write the truth. She was getting dressed when someone knocked on her apartment door. Opening it, she found a delivery man with the largest bouquet of flowers she'd ever seen. The card read, "For giving me back my colors. Dinner tonight, eh?" Before she could call him, her phone rang. Unknown number. Sarah Collins? A woman's voice, professional and cold. Yes? This is Victoria Blackwood, Alexander's ex-fiancée. We need to talk. Sarah's stomach dropped. About what? About the mistake you're making. Meet me at Café Noir in an hour. Don't tell Alexander. Against her better judgment, Sarah agreed. Café Noir was the kind of place Sarah never went. All crystal chandeliers and $100 appetizers. Victoria Blackwood was exactly what Sarah expected. Tall, blonde, perfect in a way that seemed almost artificial. "So you're the journalist," Victoria said, looking Sarah up and down. "I read your article. Very touching. What do you want?" "To warn you. Alexander Blackwood destroys everything he touches, including the people who love him. He told me about your relationship." Victoria laughed coldly. "Did he? Did he tell you how he missed our engagement party because of a board meeting? How he forgot my birthday 3 years in a row? How he promised to change but never did? People can change. Not Alexander. He's married to his company. Always has been, always will be. I wasted 5 years learning that lesson. Don't make the same mistake." Sarah stood up. "Thank you for your concern, but—" "Sit down," Victoria snapped. "I'm not finished." Something in her tone made Sarah pause. "Do you know why I really left?" Victoria's perfect facade cracked slightly. "It wasn't just the neglect. It was James." "His brother?" "The night James died, Alexander was supposed to be with me. We had dinner plans, but he canceled again for work. He and James got into that fight because James came to find him, to drag him away from the office. If Alexander had just come to dinner like he promised—" Victoria's voice broke. "He blamed himself, shut down completely, became even more obsessed with work. I tried to help, but he pushed me away. Just like he'll push you away when things get hard." Sarah sat back down. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because I saw something in your article. Hope. The same hope I had once." Victoria's eyes were sad. "Maybe it's different this time." "It's never different with Alexander. The company always comes first." They sat in silence for a moment. Then Victoria slid a business card across the table. "When it falls apart, and it will, call me. I'll buy you a drink, and we can commiserate about falling for the wrong man." She left Sarah sitting there, doubt creeping in like poison. Sarah's phone buzzed. Alexander, board meeting from hell. The timing felt like a punch to the gut. Another text. "Actually, no. Screw the board. Dinner at 8. I'll send a car." Sarah smiled despite herself. Maybe it was different this time. She spent the afternoon fielding calls from other publications, all wanting her take on the Blackwood transformation story. Her editor called again, practically giddy. "Collins, you beautiful genius. Subscriptions are up 200%. The CEO wants to give you a raise. Yesterday you wanted to fire me. Yesterday I was an idiot. This is the biggest story we've had in years." At 7:30, a sleek black car arrived at her apartment. The driver handed her a note. "Trust me, A." Instead of a fancy restaurant, the car took her to an old warehouse in the Arts District. Confused, Sarah got out and approached the unmarked door. Inside, the space had been transformed. Candles everywhere, a table set for two, and in the corner, an easel with fresh canvases and paints. Alexander stood in the center, looking nervous in jeans and a sweater instead of his usual suit. "What is this?" Sarah asked. "This used to be my studio. In college. I bought the building last year but never came back. Until today." She walked toward him, taking in the space. "It's beautiful. I thought we could have dinner and then maybe you could help me remember how to paint." "I don't know anything about painting. You know about colors, about seeing beauty in broken things." They ate dinner, take-out Chinese, not the fancy meal she'd expected, and talked about the article's reception. "The board is furious," Alexander admitted. "They think I've lost my mind." "Have you?" "Maybe. Or maybe I've finally found it." After dinner, they moved to the easel. Alexander stared at the blank canvas like it might bite him. "I don't remember how to start," he confessed. Sarah dipped a brush in red paint and made a single stroke across the canvas. "There. It's not blank anymore." He laughed and picked up a brush. Tentatively at first, then with growing confidence, he began to paint. Sarah watched as something came alive in him, something she'd glimpsed in the hotel but never fully seen. Hours passed. Paint covered their hands, their clothes. The canvas transformed into an explosion of color, abstract but emotional, raw but beautiful. "It's not very good," Alexander said finally, stepping back. "It's perfect," Sarah disagreed. "It's you." He turned to her, paint smudged on his cheek. "This is who I want to be. Someone who creates instead of destroys. Someone who feels instead of calculates." "Then be that person. Help me?" Instead of answering, Sarah kissed him. This time, there was no hesitation, no fear. Just two people choosing each other, choosing hope over history. Later, lying on a paint-splattered drop cloth, wrapped in each other's arms, Alexander said, "Victoria called you, didn't she?" Sarah stiffened. "How did you know?" "She texted me. Said she'd warned you about me." And she's not wrong. I was terrible to her. I've been terrible to everyone who tried to love me." Sarah propped herself up on an elbow. "Was? I don't want to be that person anymore, but I don't know if I can change." "You already have. You're here, aren't you? Painting instead of working? The board wants an emergency meeting tomorrow. They think your article makes me look weak. What do you think?" "I think being vulnerable takes more strength than being cold." Sarah traced patterns on his chest. "What happens tomorrow?" "Tomorrow, I tell the board that things are changing, that I'm changing, that Blackwood Industries is going to be different. They might fire you. They might, but I'd rather lose the company than lose myself again." He pulled her closer. "Or lose you. You're not going to lose me. Promise?" "I can't promise forever, but I can promise to try, to fight for this, for us, even when it's hard." "That's enough," Alexander said. "That's everything." They fell asleep in the studio, surrounded by candles and fresh paint, the city lights twinkling through the windows. Sarah's last thought before drifting off was that Victoria was wrong. People could change. Sometimes all they needed was someone to believe they could. But tomorrow would bring new challenges. The board meeting, the media frenzy, the reality of merging two very different worlds. For tonight, though, they had this, a moment of perfect possibility, painted in all the colors Alexander had forgotten he could see. Sarah woke to the sound of Alexander pacing. Sunlight streamed through the studio windows, illuminating the chaos of their impromptu art night. Paint-covered cloths, half-empty takeout containers, and the vibrant canvas that had marked Alexander's return to art. "Hey," she said softly. He turned, phone pressed to his ear, tension evident in every line of his body. He held up a finger, mouthing, "Sorry," as he continued his conversation. "No, Richard, I won't be there at 7. The meeting's at 9, that's early enough. Yes, I've seen the numbers. We'll discuss it at the meeting. Goodbye. He hung up and ran a hand through his already disheveled hair. The board's in full panic mode. Stock fluctuations, media speculation, concerns about my emotional stability. Sarah sat up, pulling the drop cloth around her shoulders. Having second thoughts? About the board meeting? Yes. About last night? Never. He sat beside her, taking her hand. I meant what I said. Things need to change. But change is terrifying. These people have known me for years. They expect the cold, calculated Alexander. What if they're right? What if this is just temporary insanity? Sarah squeezed his hand. Do you feel insane? I feel alive. For the first time in years. Then hold on to that feeling. Take it into that boardroom. Alexander's phone buzzed again. He glanced at it and sighed. Car's here. I need to go home, shower, change, face the music. Want company? He smiled. At the board meeting? That would really give them heart attacks. I meant for moral support. I could wait outside. You'd do that? Alexander, I just spent the night on a paint-covered floor with you. I think we're past normal relationship boundaries. He kissed her, soft and sweet. Meet me at the office at 8:30? I'll be there. After he left, Sarah returned to her apartment to clean up and change. Her phone had exploded overnight with messages, more interview requests, her editor wanting a follow-up piece, friends asking if she was really dating Alexander Blackwood. She ignored them all and focused on getting ready. She chose her outfit carefully, professional but not stuffy, something that said she belonged in Alexander's world without trying too hard. At 8:25, she arrived at Blackwood Industries. The lobby was buzzing with whispered conversations that stopped when people recognized her. Ms. Collins? Alexander's assistant appeared. The elevator ride felt different this time. Less intimidating, more familiar. Alexander was in his office, looking every inch the CEO in a perfectly tailored suit. But when he saw her, his corporate mask slipped, replaced by genuine warmth. You came. I said I would. He crossed the room and pulled her into his arms. I'm glad. I needed to see you before. Before you face the dragons? Something like that. He pulled back, studying her face. Whatever happens in there, know that last night changed everything for me. Alexander. No, let me say this. Even if they fire me, even if everything falls apart, it was worth it. You were worth it. Sarah touched his cheek. They're not going to fire you. They might. I'm about to propose some radical changes. Like what? Before he could answer, his intercom buzzed. Alexander straightened his tie. Showtime. Wait. Sarah grabbed his hand. Remember who you are, not just the CEO, the artist, the man who dreams in colors. He nodded, squeezing her hand. Wait for me? As long as it takes. Sarah settled in Alexander's office as he headed to the boardroom. His assistant brought her coffee and newspapers, all featuring articles about the new Alexander Blackwood. An hour passed. Then 2. Sarah tried to work on her laptop but couldn't concentrate. What was happening in that boardroom? Was Alexander holding his ground or reverting to old patterns? Finally, the door opened. Alexander walked in, looking exhausted but strangely peaceful. Well? Sarah stood up. I'm still CEO. And everything's changing. He loosened his tie and collapsed onto the couch. Come here. I'll tell you everything. Sarah sat beside him as he recounted the meeting. I started by acknowledging their concerns. The stock fluctuations, the media circus. Then I dropped the bomb. Which was a complete restructuring. We're shifting focus from hostile takeovers to sustainable development. Creating an employee wellness program. Establishing an arts endowment. Basically, everything the old Alexander would have called bad business. How did they react? Shocked silence. Then shouting. Lots of shouting. Richard called me unstable. Margaret suggested I take a leave of absence. Thomas threatened to quit. But they didn't fire you? No, because I showed them the numbers. Turns out, companies with strong ethical practices and employee satisfaction have better long-term growth. Plus, the positive press from your article has actually attracted new investors. Sarah smiled. So you convinced them with logic, not emotion? I used both. For the first time, I talked about James, about why I became so focused on profit over people, about wanting to honor his memory by being better, not just richer. And they listened? Eventually. It helped that I owned 51% of the company. He grinned. But yes, they listened. We're starting with small changes, baby steps. I'm proud of you. Alexander pulled her closer. I couldn't have done it without you. You helped me find my courage. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment before Sarah's phone buzzed. Her editor. Collins, where's my follow-up? The world wants to know what happens next with you in Blackwood. Sarah showed Alexander the message. Speaking of changes, what are you going to do? I don't know. I can't keep writing about us. It's a conflict of interest. You could write about other things, important things. Use your platform for good. Like what? Alexander sat up, excited. Like the stories nobody tells, the human cost of corporate decisions, the people behind the numbers. You could change how business journalism works. That's actually not a bad idea. Stay independent. I'll fund it. No strings attached. Sarah raised an eyebrow. Alexander Blackwood, are you trying to buy me a newspaper? I'm trying to invest in truth, in the kind of journalism the world needs. I can't accept that. Why not? Because it would compromise everything. People would say I'm in your pocket. Alexander nodded slowly. You're right. Bad idea. But, Sarah smiled, I could pitch a new column to my editor. The human side of business. Profile different companies. Tell real stories about how corporate decisions affect real people. Including Blackwood Industries? Especially Blackwood Industries. I'll be your toughest critic. I wouldn't want it any other way. Sarah's phone buzzed again. This time, it was a text from Victoria. Heard about the board meeting. I was wrong. Call me if you want the real story about why I left. You deserve to know everything. She showed Alexander the message. His face darkened. You should call her, he said quietly. Why? Because there are things about our relationship I haven't told you. Things I'm ashamed of. If we're going to do this, really do this, you need to know everything. Sarah studied his face. Are you sure? No, but it's necessary. She made the call. Victoria answered on the first ring. I'm surprised you called, Victoria said. Alexander said I should. He said there are things I need to know. There was a pause. Meet me for lunch. Same place as before. And this time, bring Alexander. Sarah looked at Alexander, who nodded. We'll be there, she said. An hour later, they sat across from Victoria at Café Noir. The tension was palpable. I owe you both an apology, Victoria began. What I told you yesterday, Sarah, was true but incomplete. I left out my own failings. Alexander shifted uncomfortably. Victoria, you don't have to. Yes, I do. She turned to Sarah. I cheated on Alexander, with his CFO, for 6 months before James died. Sarah's eyes widened. What? I was lonely. Alexander was always working. Thomas paid attention to me. It's not an excuse, just an explanation. I found out the day James died, Alexander said quietly. That's what our fight was really about. He knew about the affair and was trying to convince me to confront Victoria. After the accident, Victoria continued. The guilt was unbearable. I'd betrayed Alexander, and then James died trying to help him deal with that betrayal. I projected all my guilt onto Alexander, blamed him for everything. Sarah sat back, processing this information. Why are you telling me this now? Because I saw your article. Saw how you looked at each other in those photos from the hotel lobby. It's real, what you have. Don't let my bitterness poison it. I'm not perfect, Alexander added. I neglected Victoria, took her for granted. But what happened after? The way I shut down, pushed everyone away. That was my choice. My fault. Victoria reached across the table and took both their hands. You both deserve happiness. Don't let the past define your future. After Victoria left, Sarah and Alexander walked along the street in silence. Why didn't you tell me? Sarah finally asked. Shame. Pride. Fear that you'd think I was playing the victim. I think you're human. We all make mistakes. I'm trying to learn from mine. Sarah stopped walking and faced him. Promise me something. Anything. No more secrets. No more walls. If we're doing this, we do it honestly. I promise. He pulled her close. No more secrets. As they stood there on the busy street, surrounded by people rushing to lunch meetings and afternoon appointments, Sarah realized something. Love wasn't about finding someone perfect. It was about finding someone willing to be imperfect with you. So, she said, what's next? Alexander smiled. Lunch? I meant with us. With everything. Oh, that. He pretended to think. Well, we could take it slow. Date properly. Dinner, movies, normal couple things. Or you could move into my penthouse, help me redecorate with actual color, and we could scandalize the entire Upper East Side. Sarah laughed. Let's start with lunch and see where it goes. Deal. He took her hand. But fair warning, I'm going to fall completely in love with you. Too late, Sarah said. I'm already there. They walked hand in hand toward whatever came next, knowing it wouldn't be easy but believing it would be worth it. The afternoon sun painted the city in golden light, and for the first time in years, Alexander saw all the colors.